Hi, my name is Danielle Pieranunzi, and I am the Sites Program Manager at Green Business Certification Inc., or GBCI. And in this presentation, I'm going to talk about the Sustainable Sites Initiative, or Sites for short, a fairly new program that GBCI is managing now. So hold on while I get the presentation ready. Okay, hopefully you can see the screen. My name is, again, Danielle Pieranunzi, and I joined GBCI in July 2017 after spending about 8 years working on the development and management of the Sustainable Sites Initiative. I was at one of the three founding organizations in Austin, Texas, and that's where I'm still based. So the Sustainable Sites Initiative was formally began in 2006 through a partnership between the U.S. Botanic Garden, American Society of Landscape Architects, and the Lady Johnson Wildflower Center at the University of Texas at Austin. And over that eight-year period, I, along with a small team of staff, worked together with numerous stakeholder organizations and technical advisors to research and develop the best practices and performance benchmarks that define a sustainable and resilient land development project. Many of you know about GBCI, mainly maybe in relation to serving as a third-party certification body for LEED. And as you might know, that LEED has grown to, or GBCI has grown to administering other program certifications and professional credentials like WELL, PEER, TRUE, STAR, and Sites, of course. Sites joined GBCI in about mid-2015. So over the course of this presentation, I will give an introduction to the Sites program, why it was created, why it's important, the benefits of sites and functional outdoor spaces, and give an overview of the Sites rating system, and provide some illustrations through some of the certified projects. Let's begin. So many of us have heard that more than half of the world's population now live in urban areas, and that number is only expected to. This means where many of us live, there's increasingly more impervious surfaces, more air and water pollution, more resource consumption, and really less opportunity to have contact with nature, which we know has numerous positive physical and mental benefits. Biophilic design in architecture is a response to this notion, this need to be near nature. So how can we design our projects so we can have opportunities to be meaningfully reconnected with nature? This is a striking photo of a place in Arizona. I like to show this because it's an excellent illustration of the changes we have made to our landscapes and our communities over the years. On the left, the land is generally in its natural form, fairly untouched by any development. This is land on the Navajo Indian Reservation. And on the right is a typical suburban development that may not reflect the local ecology or culture or consider the effects it may have on future generations. So what is built on land profoundly impacts ecological systems as well as the health and safety, welfare of our communities. Too often, landscapes, infrastructure, and buildings are designed without regard to these systems or these resources and the quality of life in the community. And this is what Sites is trying to do, is really bring that to the forefront of decision making rather than serve as an afterthought. And this need is increasingly urgent to transform land development and management practices, as we have seen with recent flooding events, other extreme weather events like wildfires and droughts. So land planning, design, and development is essential to drive resiliency and to mitigate climate change and protect human health and drive prosperity for all. So USGBC and GBC are driven to create a community, a built environment that has these qualities listed here. Yet in order to make a society fully respond to this list and be safe, healthy, sustainable, and resilient, for example, and also address the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals. LEED and other programs take us part of the way forward, but we also need programs like Sites. We must move beyond the building to be truly sustainable, resilient, and healthy. Sites fills that gap in properly addressing the space outside of and in between buildings. Sites is a comprehensive land design and development rating system geared toward new construction or major renovation of existing sites. It was originally modeled after LEED, yet focused on elevating the value of landscapes and outdoor spaces. So to be clear, sites addresses applies to sites with or without buildings. If there is a building, we say that it's from the building skin outward. We do reward projects for also adding green roofs and green walls to buildings. And while every building has a site, not every site has a building. So therefore, sites fill a gap in the market for these projects as well. In contrast to buildings, built landscapes and green infrastructure have the capacity to protect and even regenerate natural systems, thereby increasing the ecosystem services they provide. And I'll speak to the concept of ecosystem services later on. I also want to note that we did take into account the relationship with LEED, and so there are potential synergies between the two systems. So if a project wanted to use LEED and sites together, we have a document that outlines those synergies on our website. Our website is sustainablesites.org. Also, we have other incentives offered if a project achieves sites gold level certification. They automatically earn all the sustainable sites credits in LEED v4. So there's a lot of reasons to apply both if you have a building on a site. But sites can also be used as a standalone rating system, of course. Like LEED, sites is more than a rating system. It's building a global community of committed professionals, and we hope to work with many others in your area. It's implementing these big global goals at a project level and facilitating the development of regional and local action too. We're very interested in working with other countries and other cities to understand how sites can be best applied, so please feel free to reach out. And now I'm going to talk about why we created sites, some of the benefits of sites and functional outdoor spaces. The concept of ecosystem services was used as the central framework in creating sites. And you might ask why. Many of you might be familiar with this term. Ecosystem services are the absolute foundation of daily life. They are the goods that are provided typically free of charge by these natural processes in nature. And so these is something that we can also design in our projects, is to protect and restore these services. So a foundational study that informed sites was the 2005 Millennium Ecosystem Assessment Report. This was a 4-year study involving more than 1,300 leading scientists around the world to assess and evaluate ecosystems which were placed into these 4 types of services. And I'll describe them because they were really very relevant in designing the rating system and the credits. I'll start on the right side, supporting services. And I start here because these services are essential to have to create the other services that are listed here. These are services that are sometimes invisible in a project. These things like soil formation, nutrient cycling. Without healthy soil, we won't have healthy plants and cleaner air and filtering water at the level that we really need. So moving along, provisioning services. These are considered products obtained from ecosystems. So think about food, fruit or vegetables that we get from, or medicine, fresh water. Regulating services. This is climate regulation, water regulation, water purification, pollination services, which we know are critical to our food supply, as well as cultural services. These are more the non-material benefits, but equally important is what we get from these systems in terms of access to recreation, even aesthetic, but also spiritual, educational, a sense of place, cultural heritage. These are all services that we get. And so again, this is sites was built around this idea of trying to protect and restore these ecosystem services on all types of project sites. Essential message of sites, again, is that any project, whether the site of a corporate campus, city park, academic institution, or even a residential yard, has that potential to conserve, restore, and create ecosystem services. Sites certified projects help to reduce water consumption, manage and treat stormwater runoff, provide wildlife habitat, reduce energy consumption, improve air quality, improve human health, and increase outdoor recreation opportunities, among many others. Green infrastructure is promoted throughout sites as a means to achieve optimal performance with multiple benefits. For example, a rain garden not only manages and treats stormwater runoff through the use of soil and vegetation-based methods, this approach can also reduce urban heat island effects, protect air quality, support wildlife habitat, as well as provide human health benefits. Embedded throughout sites is this notion of resilience, designing sites that protect existing functions like floodplains, from floodplains or wetlands, can help to help sites recover and adapt, respond quickly to any disturbances that it comes their way. So in addition to reduced impact on the land and for the community, sites projects also help to save money. Studies show that sustainably designed outdoor spaces can use less energy by utilizing energy efficient equipment and lighting, by strategically placing trees and other vegetation near or on buildings, and by taking advantage of alternative energy such as solar, geothermal, and wind, to name a few. These strategies not only lower utility bills, but they also reduce the need for dependence on fossil fuel sources, which help reduce carbon emissions. Sites projects also use less water simply by using the right plant for the right place. Can help with that, as well as other methods such as capturing rainwater or stormwater runoff, all saving a very precious resource of potable water and reduces water bills. Sites projects also use fewer resources by using materials with recycled content that are durable, that have reclaimed materials, and also using regionally sourced supplies and materials can reduce transportation and emissions. They also produce better air quality and provide a healthier and happier environment for people by offering access to the high quality landscapes that sites provides, fresh air, reduced contaminants in the space. This optimizes health and well-being, and there are also several social reasons that people use for using sites. We also encourage sustainable business practices by how we source materials, creating a sense of community by really reaching out to the community before the design has been set to understand their needs, designing the site so it's close to public transit, it's walkable, also hiring local workforce or purchasing from local businesses. So many reasons there to help with the community, the local economy in the community. So sites is fairly broad system in terms that in relation to how it applies to various different kinds of project types and sizes and locations. It can work for a greenfield site, it can work for a brownfield site, very urban site, or a rural site. So we've seen many different applications, and it works across the board. We have all our certified projects on our website. If you want to take a look at some of these in more detail, these are some images of some of those, and I'll talk a little bit later of a few of them. But just to look at one closely, this is these photos show the tremendous potential of using sites also when used in addition to LEED. This is actually a project in St. Charles, Missouri in the United States, and it's a LEED Platinum project. And on the left, after it received its certification, the clients were not very excited about the landscape design. So they had heard about sites at the time and entered the pilot program when we were field testing the draft version of the rating system. And you can see here, it went from a simple detention pond with one function to really engaging, inviting space with multiple benefits. So now it really gets people outdoors. You know, we've all heard the statistic that we spend 90% of our time indoors. So how can we create spaces that really are inviting and engaging so people want to be outside? And so this, you can see with these steps and also this pavilion that people come out for taking just breaks, but also having informal meetings or lunch outside, exercise class. And it also has a lot more biodiversity and provides some wildlife habitat. So it's got a lot more functions, and that's a big point of sites, is that really looking at any space that we have and trying to stack those functions that that space can provide. Here's another example of how sites can drive dramatic transformation and generate huge value. This project is in the Bronx in New York, and it's without a building. It has it's a dead-end street here on the left side, you can see, and the project included decommissioning the street to create this long linear park in an area of New York that was really in need of green space. So now it's not a dead-end street. That's also was a brownfield site, but it has flood control and mitigation elements. It has reused material from local construction sites for to divert that from the landfill. Has a lot of native plants, has energy efficient lighting, has really stabilized that shoreline, and has provided lots of opportunities for people to get out and sit and enjoy the outdoors. These are just a few of the strategies that some of the projects can employ with sites. So over that 8-year period of developing sites, our technical advisors provided expertise in a variety of disciplines such as ecology, landscape architecture, civil engineering, horticulture, social science, and more. Our committees were made up of practitioners, policymakers, academics, scientists. So we really did get a lot of different perspectives, and it was a very rigorous process. And the 5 areas of focus that we looked at closely for what made up a sustainable landscape were water, soil, vegetation, materials, and the human component, the human and the community that would be impacted by the project. The site's rating system is also guided by 4 important overarching goals. And these goals were used to evaluate the rating system and also place relative value or points to each of the credits. So starting with the first one, transform the market through design, development, and maintenance practices. This is very much about the process. So if we want to change the outcome of a project to be high performance, to be sustainable and resilient, we really need to change the process for getting there. And so sites really does work on front loading the attention early on in the process before anything's been designed, making sure the right disciplines and expertise is at the table, and there's a real thorough understanding of the site and the place before anything is designed, as well as including any kind of consideration of how the site will be maintained when the project is being designed, so to ensure that long-term sustainability. And the second one, create regenerative systems and foster resiliency. This is very much clearly a goal of sites to protect and restore ecosystems so they can be resilient, so they can recover and adapt and respond quickly to any disturbances. And the third goal is ensure future resource supply, mitigate climate change, really creating landscapes that are not on life support, that don't require excessive water or immense fertilizer. All of this is what sites is trying to do, is really just making the right landscape for the right place, using native plants, appropriate vegetation, and limiting water consumption and material consumption, and so on. Enhancing human well-being and strengthening community, of course, is a major component of this, is that these landscapes we're designing for people. So let's design them so they're as engaging and educational and really fostered stewardship and leadership in the users and the community that is impacted by these sites. So the culmination of all these years of research and development, which included also a pilot program, resulted in the site's V2 rating system. And so there are 2 documents available as shown here. The one on the left is a free downloadable document from sustainablesites.org. It gives you a real good introduction to the rating system and to sites, how to use the rating system. It's an abbreviated version of the credits, so it's not too much information. If you want to delve deeper and if you've got a project you're going to certify, I definitely recommend getting the Sites V2 reference guide, which will have more resources, more examples, also guidance on submittal documentation for certification. This guide is also essential if anyone is wanting to become a Sites AP, which is a Sites accredited professional, so similar to a lead AP. Is it essential to study this for the exam? So in terms of suitability or eligibility, again, sites is geared toward new construction or major renovation of existing sites. There's no maximum size set. We state a minimum of 2,000 square feet, although we are flexible if a project is ideal and a team has a good case for using sites for it. We're open to discussing that. It's available, again, anywhere in the world. And we do early engagement here, not as a requirement, but strongly encourage that projects engage with sites early on in the process, engage with GBCI as early as possible. You can register as soon as you know that you want to do sites. So please do reach out because it helps us learn about your project, and also it helps us to answer any of your questions that you might have. So the rating system was designed in these 10 different sections that follow the typical design and development process. And I'll talk briefly about each one of these sections. Section 1 is about site context or site selection. This is really about choosing the right spot, the right site to develop your project. We try to avoid developing on healthy sites with critical, rare, or sensitive features like floodplains, wetlands, other aquatic resources, healthy farmland, or threatened endangered species habitat. They try to protect those existing healthy functions. If they're there, we try to avoid them. We do have some room for still engaging in those spaces with boardwalks or picnic areas, but we really try to avoid heavy development in those areas. And then we try to gear through the credits to restoring degraded sites, like choosing sites that are degraded like brownfields or gray fields to restore those ecosystem services and bring back life to those areas, and as well as choosing sites that are within existing infrastructure, that are near public transit, that are walkable, and so on. And then section 2, pre-design assessment and planning, is a really important section. Highly recommend looking at that before you get started. This involves having an integrated design team and a process that really encourages a communication protocol, and it engages all different disciplines and expertise early on in the process before anything's been designed. It includes doing a thorough site assessment before anything's designed, so really understanding what the constraints and opportunities are on the site, what the surrounding community is like, what are the potential resources or pollution sources, anything like that. So we provide a worksheet for that to really help guide you through that. And what I like about the site assessment prerequisite is that we also provide how the information you're collecting is not only intended to influence your design, but it also is information that you might need later on in the credits. So we clearly show you which credits it would refer to. And the next 4 sections talk about those areas of focus that I mentioned earlier: water, soil and vegetation, materials, human health and well-being. These are all about really trying to protect any resources that we have, restoring anything that's been degraded, using materials wisely, creating spaces that are very engaging for all types of people, really understanding what their needs are before we design the space. And this goes from anyone that's either an employee on the site or visitor or the surrounding community. So really important to look at each one of these carefully. And I'm going to talk about a few of the credits in each of the sections, so just you get an idea of what kind of credits sites has, just to dig a little deeper. So in section 4, which is the soil and vegetation section, we have a credit about conserving and restoring native plant communities. Now, native plants are not a requirement for your site, but we do encourage, in a couple credits, the use and the conservation of native plants. What we do require is that no invasives are brought to the site, and any new plants that are brought to the site are at the basic level. They're appropriate or adapted to the climate and the area. But if you go as far as getting native plants and restore native plant communities that can encourage habitat, then we do reward you with additional points. The next one, optimize biomass, is really looking at that vertical layering of vegetation. And this, we provide a really clear table of how to assess your site before it's been designed. And this is clearly right before it's been designed, not 200 years ago, but clearly right before what you start with, and then what your design is. And you show the difference in vegetation, and there are different values that you multiply depending on if it's trees or trees with understory or meadows. And it's all related and calibrated to your region. So this is about really optimizing biomass for ecosystem services. And this next example is reduced urban heat island effects, very similar to the lead credit about using vegetation to reduce that the heat coming off pavement, whether it's a green roof or you could use a green wall, use trees to shade pavement, so on. And then our water section, some examples here. We have a prerequisite and a credit managing precipitation on site. So we have a base threshold in the prerequisite, and then going above and beyond gains you the credit points. And then another credit about reducing potable water consumption outdoors. So a prerequisite that really looks at landscape irrigation. We use a similar tool as a reference as the lead. But of course, if you're not in the US, then we would just look for the equivalent in your country for really anything that is not relevant in your country. And then we have a credit that goes above and beyond, say, reducing potable water consumption, not just for landscape irrigation, but any outdoor water features as well for makeup water. We want to really try to avoid using potable water as much as possible. And then a couple examples here of materials, using regional materials similar to LEED, but really looking also at soil and plants, compost, mulch, where those are sourced from, as well as reusing salvage materials and plants, really trying to encourage the reuse of any plants. These could be plants that are salvaged on your own site. If you have to put something somewhere and you have to move plants around, if you can salvage those or salvage materials and reuse them. We've had project reuse material and then create mulch with that. And so it's really, there's lots of possibilities. And this could also be from materials from offsite, maybe a different construction site. And then looking at human health and well-being, here's a few examples. I've spoken a few times about creating these engaging outdoor spaces, like supporting that really have an intent. So supporting mental restoration, supporting physical activity, supporting social connection. We have also credits that really promote social equity as well. So really, this is a really great section to enhance that part of a site. And then now I'll talk about the last 4 sections briefly. Section 7 is about construction. So you can have the best design in place, but things can fall apart in the construction phase, unfortunately. So sites really tries to address this typical gap between design and construction to ensure the design is understood by the contractors, the construction team, and is implemented as expected. That resources are diverted from the landfill, for example, that we try to reduce emissions from construction equipment, and so on. And then section 8 is looking at operations and maintenance, and we do look at this in the lens of how it's going to be planned and any commitments that are going to be made to really ensure that long-term sustainability. So we look at plans, policies, projections of waste of waste that might be produced and how to divert that from the landfill, potentially composting it on site or near the site. So this is really critical, and it's not something, maintenance is not something we want people to think about after construction. We really require that early on in the section 2. When you have an integrative design process, we require that somebody who is familiar with maintenance weighs in on the design. So they are thinking about not just the design as it stands right then, but how will that function when you're in that operation and maintenance phase? Is it going to be sustainable? So that's very exciting to kind of promote that element of the design process. Section 9 is looking at education and performance monitoring. Of course, we want to share this information with a wider audience. So ask projects that they can create a case study and share it on a website or at a conference or in an article. They can also do site programming, tours, classes, any interpretive elements that they can do to share what they've done with the landscape scope of the project. And also performance monitoring credit is about planning to monitor the performance of the site over time, which is really critical. We need always additional information of how these designs, the outcome of these designs over time. So whether they worked or not, we ask projects to monitor the strategy, report on that, and share it with a wider audience. So very exciting about that. Section 10 is about innovation exemplary performance, similar to a LEED rating system where projects can achieve bonus points by maybe something that's not addressed in the rating system, or maybe going above and beyond an existing credits threshold as exemplary performance. So here's a snapshot of the 18 prerequisites that we have. I won't be able to talk about all this in this time, but I just wanted to show you that there are 18. I talked about some of those. And this is our scorecard. You can also download for free from our website. And there is a total of 200 points. 48 credits are optional. So out of that, and I say optional because you need about 70 points to be certified out of the 200. And if your project can reach 135 or above, you'll reach the platinum level. So, and I also again want to mention that if a project is going after sites and LEED, if they achieve that site's gold level, they'll automatically earn all the sustainable sites credits in LEED V4, B, D, and C if they're pursuing both of those rating systems together. Again, there is a synergies document on sustainablesites.org, the resources page, if you want to look more closely at the synergies between sites and LEED B, D, and C, and LEED for neighborhood development also. Here is the pricing structure for project certification, and it's based on a flat fee, so it's not based on project size or budget. And we do provide a discount for ASLA members and USGBC members at the silver level and above. And we do also provide a discount if you combine your payment of registration and certification together. I do also want to point out we have a pathway or pre-certification pathway that's optional. This allows some project team and their client and to determine which credits and prerequisites their project is likely to achieve during the full certification review. So we provide a worksheet, and it's less documentation, of course, in the certification, but it's really based on your design and your plans of what you intend to do. And we provide you feedback. It's a real review. And you provide a site plan and any other kind of additional documentation that the worksheet asks for. And sometimes the pre-certification helps projects attract community supporters, funders, and even expedite permitting in some localities. So there's lots of reasons for that. We're seeing a lot more interest in pre-certification too. Accountability throughout the process. I want to talk about this because in addition to sites providing guidance and metrics to achieving to creating a sustainable landscape, sites offers this accountability throughout the process. The party verification helps guarantee that each project can save energy, water, resources, reduce overall impact on the environment. Site certification provides that transparency and validation and ensures that clients get what they pay for. So we've heard from many people that things get value engineered out throughout that process. So we really try to encourage certification to really make sure those project goals are met and the client gets what they paid for. So without that insurance, projects can face various market disadvantages. The project goals can get compromised. So we really encourage projects to go through that certification process and ensure the outcome that they are desiring. And it also is certification is a prominent display of leadership that has a large impact on the community and maximizes the overall quality of life for everyone that uses the site, but is also that can learn from the site. We can really bring exposure to your project to a wider audience. The hallmark of sites is also the implementation of that integrative design process that I mentioned earlier. Again, this means that the entire project team comes together early on from the beginning so that time, money, and resources involved in designing and constructing the site can be maximized. So for you, this means fewer delays and cost overruns and a more successful outcome. And this is a quote from James Corner, a prominent landscape architect from field operations who worked on our second certified V2 project. And on the designer side, it's great to see a quote saying that the sites was an important tool that kept their entire team accountable to a standard of best practice and resulted in an unprecedented project, the transformation of Chicago Navy Pier. So if you're not familiar with this project, please check it out. It's in downtown Chicago. And so this is not just for the clients, but also for the design team, the project team, to help guide them. We're also seeing interest in sites being advanced into policy. U.S. General Services Administration, which is a federal administration that owns and manages many federal properties like courthouses, land port of entries, other federal office buildings and data processing centers, post office. And so they have adopted sites for their capital construction program. Very exciting to see them go through this. They're an early adopter of LEED as well. States like Rhode Island are also adopting sites into their Green Buildings Act. This is a quote actually from Christian Gabriel from GSA, and I'll read it. Talks about, again, that accountability, how important that is. Our incorporation of the site certification program provides an added focus on the quality of our site development, clear performance standards, and third-party verification, all of which help GSA meet its sustainability goals and ensure accountability in the actual performance of delivered projects. So let's talk a little bit more about projects that are registered and certified currently with sites. We have about 175 projects across 36 US states and 11 countries that have already registered or certified with sites. Here you can see this is from September 2019, the mix of project types that are applying sites from open space park projects, government, mixed use, commercial, educational. We're definitely seeing lots of university campuses, streetscapes and plazas, institutional, botanic gardens, and so on. We have also even a cemetery. So it's a very good mix and show that it's not about the type of project, but really the idea of implementing sustainable and resilient outcomes. This is the first project to achieve Sites V2 Platinum in the world. This is the Center for Sustainable Landscapes at Phipps Conservatory. It's in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Encourage anyone that is in that area to visit this site. They have not only the Sites Build project, but they have also many other certified projects on this campus. So the Center for Sustainable Landscapes is considered one of the greenest projects in the world, having achieved Sites LEED WELL certifications in addition to the Living Building Challenge. It was initially developed as on a brownfield site, so you can't tell by these images, but there was essentially no existing natural land covers or ecosystems to really preserve or protect. It's this education, research, and administrative facility can now manage a 10-year storm event using soil and vegetation-based methods, and features a 1.5 acres of new green space with over 100 native plant species. It's also net zero water, so it's treating all storm and sanitary water captured on site. It's net zero energy, generated its own energy through photovoltaic solar panels and a wind turbine, and many other features. This next project is the Dell Medical District at the University of Texas at Austin. And running directly through the middle of the medical school is Waller Creek. This is a previously very neglected urban stream that played an integral role in influencing design efforts. One of the key elements of this project's design focused on improving the ecological function of the creek corridor, which included removing numerous invasive species. 70% of the vegetative canopy was comprised of invasive species. This took about 18 months. This also included stream bank stabilization and then revegetation of diverse native plant communities. And what I would point out is this approach is really moving away from planting design for the sake of visual effects or aesthetics alone, and really prioritizing ecological function as well. And one of the Sasaki principal that was in charge of this project in terms of landscape design, he explains that it's not a surprise that they're seeing a lot of clients increasingly interested in these benefits of cleaner air, cleaner water, improved habitat value, more biodiversity, and climate regulation. That's more important now to clients, which is very exciting to see. And as a hospital, a teaching hospital, medical school, this is amazing to see because we have seen many studies where surgical patients that have a view of vegetation heal faster, they are released quicker when they have that view of vegetation compared to other patients that are not that do not have these views. So there's a lot of other social benefits for employees as well and patients to having this access to nature. And this is an example of a redevelopment project of a more industrial site. So the top left, you can see a couple before images, very concrete laden industrial site, no green space. The operations costs to running this aging facility were very high. And this also increased the utility rates for residents. And it was not only lacking green space, it didn't have basic ADA requirements. And it really just wanted to demonstrate more leadership and more sustainability features for the community and the employees. So now this site, which is about 3.2 acres, is a sustainable eco campus that sits within a functioning electric power station. So pretty amazing. It's very welcoming now. And it's one of its iconic features is this centennial courtyard in the bottom right. You'll see this giant trellis, and what that is a decommissioned substation that rather than removing that and sending it to the landfill, they decided to preserve that and really show that the history of the site, and it juxtaposed to the of industry and nature together really worked well. It also provides shade, and it's functional that way, and kind of a meeting space, a central gathering area for farmers markets, informal meetings, work breaks, and so on. This has attracted also younger audience to working at this facility, and also, again, lowered operations costs. And this project, as well as the one before at the University of Texas, also has LEED certified buildings. This is a example of a very dense urban site in downtown San Francisco. It's called 38 Dolores Mixed-Use Development. It's got a Whole Foods and some other retail on the bottom floor with 81 residential units on the top. And the landscape scope of the project really included a podium courtyard with an edible garden, a living roof, native habitat, street level sidewalks with rain gardens, a corner plaza and parklet, And now all of this has really become a prominent popular lounging spot for the public. And so this urban infill project has really demonstrated how it can reduce the project's carbon footprint even further using these using the landscape, whatever they had, to be more sustainable. And it supports this urban vitality also, and has features like rainwater harvesting, alternative energy technologies. They've built a green roof that's intended as a habitat for an endangered butterfly. So they also have some environmental education about all their features. And as you can see here, there are many opportunities for respite and social connection for employees and visitors. In Greenways Headquarters in Tokyo, Japan, it was our first Sites V2 certified project outside of the United States. And you can see here again another very small project, 0.37 acres. So it's really possible to have sites applied to a variety of project types. This project can now manage 95th percentile precipitation event. That water is collected in a cistern and then used for irrigation. They have solar panels that generate electricity for their company electric cars and their restaurant guests. And although the roof is on top of a private office building, the site is regularly open to the public for visitation, for tours, for educational opportunities. So all of these projects on our sustainablesites.org. I encourage you to check out that directory. And if you do have a project that's interested, you would register your project at sustainablesites.org if you're ready. And also, I want to bring back the professional credential Sites AP. We hope that you join the Sites growing community. There's a listing of some of the countries that have Sites APs. We have a directory of those folks on our website as well. And in closing, I just want to emphasize some key components of sites. Unlike typical buildings, sustainable landscapes are critical for our built environment because they appreciate and value over time rather than depreciate. Healthy landscapes, as they evolve and mature, they clean air and water. They continue to control flooding and erosion. They reduce resource consumption, help to regulate climate, reduce urban heat island, strengthen our ability to respond and recover from extreme weather events and other disturbances. These are all services that are essential to the health and well-being of all life on this planet. And ultimately, sites is an educational tool that can be used to create more meaningful and functional places that reconnect humans with nature, to reflect the local ecology and culture, to learn about our place, to design sites for both short and long-term benefits. It's much more than a certification system, but a much needed voice at the table and a tool to activate positive change. Setting this foundation encourages and inspires leadership and stewardship in present and future generations. Thank you so much for listening, and for hopefully you contact us with any questions about sites. We have a general email, sites@gbci.org, or you feel free to contact me directly. There is my email address right now. Thank you so much.